Good evening. Welcome to the Planning Applications Committee. Apologies for absence. Yeah.
Thank you, Chair. Councillor Dean and Councillor Crowe is substituting.
Thank you very much for subbing. We have Dave Warders absent. He doesn't have a sub tonight. He rang in quite late. Declarations of pecuniary interest. Anybody? Nope. Minutes of the previous meeting, can we agree? Thank you. Just to explain how the planning committee works, the officers will present reports and then objectors have an opportunity to speak. You have 3 minutes, and we have this little traffic light system here. When it goes to amber, means you've got a minute left. So if you could bear that in mind when you're speaking, and it's better if you can stop within the 3 minutes rather than me ask you to stop. I'd rather that happened. After the objectors spoke, then the agent gets the same amount of time to respond. Then we go back if there are any issues for the officer to pick up. And then if the ward councillors are going to speak, they'll speak at that point. And then finally it moves to the members of the committee. And once it moves to the committee, there are no opportunities for the public to speak again. After we've had questions and then comments, we will make a decision on each of the applications. So tonight we're going to, I'll give you the order of the agenda. We're taking the Abbey wall works first. That will be followed by Russell Road. And then, my sheet, number 3 we'll do Hartfield Road, and then the fire station, and then finally the Leafield Road. So our first agenda item then is Abbey Wall Works.
Thank you, Chair. Members, the application site is located on the south side of Station Road and north of Moranton Way in South Wimbledon. Station Road is a short cul-de-sac road which serves the existing site, houses to the north and Children's Play Centre to the east. The site currently comprises single-storey commercial units with corrugated roofs and associated hard standing. The site's irregular in shape, getting smaller as you go east, and is bordered along Station Road with a listed wall. The existing uses on site are car repairs, servicing, MOT and car wash facilities from several businesses. The proposal itself is for redevelopment of the site to provide 70 residential flats and a ground floor commercial unit. The proposal will take the form of a building with various heights across the site, ranging from 3, 5-storey and 6-storey. The residential flats will be set across all floors and provide a mix of 5 studio flats, 21 one-bed flats, 35 two-bed flats and 9 three-bed flats. Each flat would have access to private outdoor amenity space as well as 2 communal roof terraces with soft landscaping. 3 on-site disabled parking spaces will be provided at the eastern end of the site via the existing vehicle access off Station Road. The ground floor unit would be provided at the western end of the building and have pedestrian access only via the existing accesses there. The external materials would comprise a mix of facing brick, copper roof panelling and metal frame windows. So members, this is the proposed block plan. So what it does shows you also is the roof layout. Talking you through the proposed floor plans. So at ground floor, the commercial unit would be on the corner on the western part of ground floor with some residential units on ground floor. You'll note the building has been designed it's stepped in from the Grade 2 listed wall, which is up here, and also set in from this boundary edge here. First floor, mix of units on each floor. So all residential, access via 3 stair cores, here, here and here. Second floor really mirrors the layout from the first floor. Third floor plan, so breaking up the building, which you'll see on the images, are 2 lower 3-storey sections, which would also have a rooftop communal areas, which would also provide some small amount of area for play space for children. Fourth floor plan. So fourth floor plan. So this is within the roof sections of these two sections of the building and partly over here. And then you'll see the highest point of the building is at the western side here for the top floor. And then the roof plan here is shown. Metal roof with single ridges, so traditional pitch roofs throughout. Turning to elevations, so this is the proposed north elevation, which would front Station Road. The building would have three distinct larger sections with two smaller sections in between. The top floor and all parts of the building would be set back and provide flats within the roofs. The design would use a mix of arched windows and conventional windows, providing variety to the building. Access to all residential flats would be via the two access points in the recessed three-storey section, so here and here. Proposed south elevation, so this would front Moranton Way on the south side, really mirroring the other side of the building, with exception to it being full height at this part on this corner at the western block. And on this side, this serves a stairwell internally, so no habitable windows are here, that just serves a stairwell. There are proposed some access points on this side, here and here, mirroring the other side. This is specifically designed in to future-proof so that should the proposed project from TfL for a cycle and footway on Moranton Way come forward, that would allow access for residents in the future. To east and west elevations. So the larger section of the building here. So you'll note the building is curved at this part, so it curves round as it curves round Station Road here. There's a neighbouring commercial unit here. The proposal's specifically been designed to install fake recessed windows here, so that would allow for any redevelopment that comes forward on a neighbouring site not to be prejudiced from habitable windows facing it. The east side would be this section here. They're also showing the elevation down Station Road here, but much thinner end, curved end to the design with three balconies there. Section drawing. So this existing houses on the north side of Station Road. This is a section, two sections, one going through the building, just showing the full 5 stories here, which would be opposite, and then this one showing one of the two recessed 3-story sections of the building here. In terms of highways, so the proposal includes a number of required works at the public highway. The council's transport team have agreed to the following measures to make the scheme acceptable. This includes double yellow lines for the northern side of Station Road, which is here. A number of the properties on the northern side of Station Road have drop curbs for vehicle access. A double yellow line section of over 20 metres here on the south side, which would allow for servicing to service the residential units proposed. It would also allow for servicing any other existing residential units within that road as well. That has specifically been designed large enough to cater for a refuse vehicle truck. Further, double yellow lines here and also formation of parking layout here. At the moment, it's somewhat sporadic in that cars park up on the curbside, as there is unrestricted parking in this road at the moment. Also proposed is a slight widening of the pavement to make it better for pedestrians. Some proposed tracking plans. Proposal includes tracking plans to both the residential aspect and commercial aspect of the scheme. So, whilst reliance is on this tracking plan demonstrating that a refuse vehicle reverses up Station Road, we understand this is based on existing servicing arrangements down that road. Whilst highways do not encourage this, the applicants have put forward another tracking plan whereby a refuse truck could, in theory, turn the existing turning head at the eastern side of Station Road. In terms of trees, there are existing trees on TfL-owned land to the south. The proposal has been designed stepping away from those. Boundary wall treatment has been looked at by our tree officer in the scheme and are happy that this could go forward. The trees would have to be pruned back to allow for the proposal. However, we're confident those trees can be retained. So, Chair, turning to some visual aids to help members with the scheme. So, the scheme during the assessment of the application was subject to amendments. So this is some of the amendments here. So as originally submitted, this was full height on this side, which faces the properties north on Station Road. This has been reduced to match the height here. So there, setting it there. I'll just get to the other visual aids. So to assist, the applicants have shown the as originally submitted and then as proposed now before you. So that's a view from Abbey Road here, and a bit closer as originally submitted and proposed. From the east along Station Road, as originally submitted and proposed. And again further down Station Road. And in front of it, where the main change was, so originally submitted and currently proposed before you. On Moranton Way, there was a slight change to the roof at the top, there and there. And again, further around the corner here. So I hope that assists in your debate this evening. Showing some visual aids of the proposed roof terraces and how they could look for communal outdoor space. As I said, some soft landscaping is proposed to assist. This also assists in keeping people away from the edges. So members, turning to site photographs. This is a view of the site is here. From north looking south. So looking east from the junction here, the western, so the site on the right hand side, Station Road properties on the left. As you can see, with existing businesses, the parking is somewhat sporadic at the moment. On Station Road looking west. And further down Station Road looking west again. The listed wall is here. And this is a view just a bit further east on Moranton Way, just before the roundabout to the east, with the site here, the sheds. You can see the trees and the existing industrial sheds there. And then on the corner, site's on the right hand side. And this is just an existing picture showing the Harris Academy School that was under construction at the time of this photograph. That is west of the site, circa around 100 metres. Chair, turning your attention to the modification sheet. I hope members have seen that and noted the updates to the reports and relevant paragraphs. We do have some additional comments from our climate change officer now, along with the carbon shortfall contribution and additional condition. Overall, members, the proposal would provide a full redevelopment of a brownfield site, providing new housing along with a new commercial unit. It's acknowledged the proposal will result in a clear change in character to the Station Road and short section of Moranton Way. Taking into account what officers consider to be a high quality design, officers are satisfied that the overall scale of the building can be accommodated on site and in the surroundings. The proposal will result in a clear change in outlook to the front of the neighbouring residential properties to the north. This is to the front, and combined with the separation distances, officers do not consider the proposal would be materially harmful to these neighbouring amenities. Further, the impact on heritage assets has been carefully considered and is considered to be acceptable. A number of highway measures are proposed which will assist in servicing the new units as well as existing residential properties. Overall, officers consider the application to be acceptable in planning terms and recommend approval subject to Section 106 agreement and conditions. Thank you.
There's quite a lot in the modifications paper, so I'm going to allow 5 minutes for reading. Time? Yes? Okay. Okay. Can I call on Lindsay Frankel, please, to speak?
Okay. So I have been nominated by my fellow Station Road residents to make a statement to the committee that outline our concerns about the development. These concerns are shared by 98 petitioners as well as residents of the neighbouring streets who will also be impacted. The following statement details the outstanding objections to the scheme and also contests some of the assumptions made in the Planning Officer's report and the subsequent recommendation to approve the proposals. Firstly, the Planning Officer's report refers to the suitability of the scheme's scale and density in the context of it being an urban context. We believe that there's no question our street is residential rather than an urban area. There's no existing urban features in the vicinity. The Planning Officer's report accepts that the reduction in daylight and sunlight that will affect the existing properties in Station Road and Abbey Road on the basis that this is normal for an urban context. Residents maintain that this is incorrect. It's an incorrect representation of the existing residential area's characteristics. Station Road is described as a thoroughfare in the report when it is actually a narrow residential street with no turning space at the end. Increasing the service and delivery traffic for 70 new residential units as well as a large ground floor commercial unit is unsustainable. It's only going to add more noise and pollution. The current junction to Abbey Road and High Path will also become more dangerous. The Residents' Association is not opposed to future development of the garage sites, as long as it provides genuine family housing, unlike the current proposals, which offer a totally unsuitable mix of accommodation, with a large proportion being studios and one-bedroom flats, which is not suitable for family housing. Talking of which, we also understand that the development at 40 Station Road and the proposed redevelopment of Lowell House were both required to reduce their scale to 2 to 3 stories, and also that reflect the local vernacular in their appearance before they could be approved by the Planning Application Committee. The residents questioned the acceptance in the report of the low level of proposed affordable housing and also the potential difficulty ensuring buy-to-rent owners. There is also the question as to whether the parents and staff visiting the new Harris Academy will respect the car-free basis of the current proposals. It's also worth adding that the Residents' Association believe that the Planning Officer's report is mistaken in claiming that the scheme is of a high-quality design standard. The appearance introduces fake industrial architectural detailing features and a lot of balconies that are going to overlook existing residential properties affecting our privacy. The proposal also includes plans for a large commercial unit built into the ground floor of the development. The residents are concerned about the impact that this will have, which could include late-night opening hours, increased service traffic, excessive refuse, which will also need to be collected and may attract vermin. Residents at Kelmscott House and Abbey Road have voiced their concern about the scale of the development and the introduction of this commercial unit on the corner of High Path and Abbey Road.
Sorry, I'm going to have to ask you to stop.
Okay,
there.
sure.
Thank you. Neil Jones, please.
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Chair. My name is Neil Jones, planning consultant for the applicant Indigo Scott, a family-run business based here in the borough. I appreciate the chance to speak in support of the proposal. As you have heard, this project has been recommended for approval by officers after a thorough planning process. All the relevant policies and guidance on residential amenity, highways, sustainability, and so on have been passed, and all external consultees, including Historic England, have raised no objection. We are grateful for the hard work of the council officers. The result is a very high quality, sensitively designed building that will make far better use of the site than the existing combination of garages and car washes, will reduce the number of vehicle trips on Station Road significantly, and can further demonstrate Merton's reputation as a borough that supports high-quality residential development on brownfield sites. I'd like to emphasise the changes that the project has undergone since we started consultation with residents and council officers. The comments in your report from the DRP and the Urban Design Officer relate to earlier iterations of the proposals. Since these comments, there have been significant reductions to the height, bulk, and massing of the scheme. Overall, there has been a 40% reduction in floor space since the project began. Your DRP made many positive comments on the design, commending the applicant on their extensive efforts to reflect the historical context of the conservation area, the Priory and Abbey Mills. They gave an amber rating and suggested design amendments which have been included, and as a result, officers did not require further design review. The changes made resulted in a significant reduction in the amount of development, and so led to a reduction in the amount of affordable housing that the project is able to support. However, you will note from your report that the council's own viability assessors have looked at this very closely to ensure that the affordable provision represents the maximum that can be provided. I would also add that the early and late stage reviews will capture any ability to provide further affordable housing. The applicant has specifically focused on the provision of social rented 3-bedroom family homes, which will be very welcome to the families who occupy them. In addition to a significant SIL payment of over £1.4 million, the applicant has agreed to make further payments totalling £30,000 to improve the cycle and pedestrian environment on Moranton Way and Station Road. The applicant also secures the repair of the Grade 2 listed Abbey Wall and the listed lampposts. To summarise, this proposal, which
I'm really
has
sorry.
16...
I'm going to stop you because you've had 3 minutes as well. I'm really sorry. Okay, thank you. I'm going to call upon local councillor Ellie Stringer, please.
Thank you for the opportunity to respond to this application. And as a ward councillor, I'm very aware of the need for more home building in our city and our borough, and recognise that our ward is a popular and well-connected place that people like to live in. So therefore, we have no in principle objection to providing more homes in this location in Station Road. And indeed, as with other local residents, believe the development in 40 Station Road has been a success. I have had a large number of residents contact me with heartfelt concerns about material matters regarding the height and density of the proposed building and the impact this will have on their light and privacy. You've heard some of this already from the Residents Association, so I will focus on a few other points. Firstly, as outlined in my representation, I believe the amount of affordable housing on offer to be far too low, at less than 10%. It's much lower than what was initially outlined when the developer first started the consultation before the planning application. I recognise the changes to the design and the changes to the total number of household properties has decreased, but the proportion has dropped much more. As outlined in my representation, we have questions about the comparability of the costs used in the model. Therefore, the recommendation for early and late stage reviews of the financial viability assessments are, for me, necessary non-negotiables if this is to go forward. Second, the heritage and archaeological aspects. This is an important historical site. This has to be recognised in both the construction and the design. The Priory Wall, in particular, is an important local landmark. This is built into the design to some extent, but it should be a primary feature, with potentially the building moving further back. And we echo concerns from groups such as Wandle Heritage about the need for a proper archaeological investigation, and welcome the recommendation that no development shall take place until this happens. Finally, we recognise that the area is at the centre of a lot of development at the same time, with the school being built nearby, the regeneration of the High Path estate, and the early discussions about the development of the Edicat site just a few metres away. We think that if this proposal does go ahead, it must be used as an opportunity to develop the local infrastructure, particularly given the lack of parking. So I was glad to see references to the aspirations to develop Moranton Way, to add in cycle paths and footpaths, working with TfL and the council. There is some proposed funding for this. If the application is to be approved, we need to review whether this is sufficient, and the council and TfL's work on this should be expedited as soon as possible to help with the other developments going on in the area. Thank you, Chair.
Statement from Councillor Bengbo, which I said I'd ring out. He's been quite poorly. I'm very much in favour of the proposed redevelopment of Abbey Wall works at the developers' public consultation meeting last year, solely because the current state of the south side of Station Road badly needs to be revamped, replacing the old tiresome working garages buildings with residential properties. However, one thing stuck in my mind, which I repeatedly queried to the developers several times, which is the sheer height and mass of the proposed new building blocks of flats, literally right in the face of the existing residents living on the north side of Station Road. This was my main concern, and whether the height and size of the proposed new building should be scaled back. Station Road is really a lane which has rich historical links to the Grade 2 listed Merton Priory Wall, and ideally should continue to be preserved for future generations. After some consideration to protect long-term residents over private developers, it's clear to me, and perhaps to everyone else, that this development will have a major impact on the existing residential homes on Station Road, and I wish to ask the councillors to consider this carefully. The proposal is right on their doorsteps. Originally, the development was proposing 79 flats and ground floor commercial properties, and then after consultation, revised development was made, reducing to, he's put 72, but actually it's 70. But with rather cramped interiors. It must be noted, the other side of the development building is far too close to a major polluted road, Moranton, and windows on that side of the building. The developer expressed that there would be a 4-foot wide gap between the historical wall and the building, which will be used as a footpath, and I honestly can't see a footpath being kept clean. It would turn a neglected wall into a rubbish magnet. Naturally, the existing residents are concerned that the proposed development height and mass are too high and big respectively, 4 stories, 6 stories, against their property on the north side of Station Road, which are Edwardian terrace houses with 2 stories. This will result in the loss of sunlight on front rooms and gardens throughout the year. There is a new building at the end of the lane, 40 Station Road, which recently built and is more suitable scale and appearance, and would strongly urge developers to take note of this, as well as listen to the Station Road residents. Don't forget there's a secondary school being built nearby, so perhaps it might be worthwhile building family homes rather than a block of flats for 70 flats. I recall the developers assuring me there will be no additional parking spaces, but with their large-scale development, delivery and refuse services must be considered without blocking the lane. Most residents have off-road parking, which needs to be left open with easy access. I wish to question why none of the residents received any letters, leaflets about the proposed development, and also why a planning application went live during the election period and Christmas period last December. I acknowledge the period for representation was then extended earlier this year. The whole community on Station Road as well as adjoining Abbey Road are completely against the vast planning proposal, bearing in mind they're already concerned about traffic knock-on effects once the secondary school opens next September. May I point out the importance of preserving the historical listed Priory Wall remains, and there are risks involved in this planning permission if given the go-ahead. I've concluded the planning application to redevelop Abbey Wall works for the large block of 70 flats on Station Road will considerably affect the existing residents' lives and potentially a risk to the listed Priory Wall should be firmly rejected. It does nothing good to build an excessive overdevelopment. I strongly urge councillors of the PAC to do the same. So, comments from councillors. Do you want to add anything? Please.
Thank you, Chair. Members, pick up on a few points there to assist. So, in terms of the context of the site, there is a number of different uses in the surrounding area, as well as residential. You do have obviously the industrial units to the south beyond Moranton Way, the car wash facility to the west, and then the school further west beyond. The High Path Estate regeneration scheme is over here. These houses here aren't part of it, but the closest units which are part of it are these. There is a 3 to 4 story block of flats here. So in terms of the context of the site, given the current existing industrial units on the site, it is considered that a flatted development can be accommodated here. In terms of its scale and massing, the building itself has been proposed to be set in away from the listed wall at the front here, but also away from all boundaries in the site. In terms of servicing and delivery traffic, well, that aspect does have to be balanced with the existing uses on the site and the current parking situation, which, as you see from the site photographs, is somewhat sporadic in terms of how that's done. The proposal would form formal parking spaces along Station Road and allow for servicing specifically to the flats. The affordable housing aspect has been reviewed by a viability consultant, and yes, with the changes during the assessment of the application proposed, which officers considered were necessary for neighbouring amenity reasons to the residential units to the north, which resulted in a loss of 2 flats in this corner of the building to ensure that the outlook from the neighbours to the north was similar a whole way across the building. There are 2, as I said, 3-storey sections in between, which does help break up the bulk and massing. Historic England have been involved from the very beginning with regards to the listed wall, and they welcome the repairs proposed to it. The proposal doesn't seek to punch through the wall, but may use the existing entrances through the wall. And along with our conservation officer, they are happy with that aspect. Thank you, Chair.
Councillor Lanning.
Thank you, Chair. Could officers comment on the percentage of properties that are single aspect and also those that are single aspect and north facing? Thank you.
In terms of single aspect units, I'll talk you through the plan. So, yes, there are a number of single aspect units proposed within the scheme.
How many are there?
The figure I have in front of me here is 19 single aspect units. So the way it's been done, I don't actually have the plan on the screen which highlights them, but I do have it in front of me, which are the dual aspect units for the scheme. So the majority of them, the dual aspect units, are nearer the corners, naturally. Single aspect units, for example, the studio flat here. A unit here as well. So there are some north single-facing aspect units within the scheme.
Can you know how many there are of those?
Just north-facing.
Yeah, single aspect north facing.
Could I help answer that question?
Okay.
Is that okay?
Yeah.
So just to answer the question, there's 19 north-facing single aspect units. Of those 19, none are larger 3-bed units, but rather 3 are 2-bedroom units, with the remainder being 1-beds or studios. So that reflects the policy guidance in the Mayor's SPG, which seeks to avoid single aspect units of 3 bedrooms or more, And I think it's also important to note that the single aspect dwellings that are proposed all have been assessed to provide suitable standards of accommodation. So they all meet the minimum unit sizes, and they all satisfy the passive ventilation requirements of building regulation. So in terms of quality of accommodation, they provide a suitable quality.
If I could just follow up on that, because I think that it generally goes against our policy or expectations that we have so many single aspect. I suppose my question is whether this could have been designed in a way to avoid that and to actually have had sort of all dual aspect or majority, I suppose majority are dual aspect, but whether we could have avoided so many single aspect if it was designed slightly differently.
So during the application process and pre-application discussions, originally the building proposed 5 stair cores within it, and following discussions with our urban design officer and officers, and given the quite awkward shape of the site, it was actually not looking, the flats weren't looking as working very well, running from straight front to back. For example, doing that, they became somewhat very thin and sort of long. So a balance has to be struck between the constraints of the site. Further, the 2 lower sections of the building are important in terms of street scene and neighbouring amenity to the north to help provide that visual gap. In doing that, that does allow for views out to this side and this side as well. But during the sort of design aspect process under the pre-application, when looking at having units running front to back, it wasn't really working very well. So that's how it's come to this with the scheme before you, in terms of dual aspect or single aspect units.
Councillor Southgate.
Just pursuing the same point, Chair. So we have 19 of these units which are north-facing and single aspect. How many single aspect units do we have that are not north-facing? I'm referencing the submission of the Wimbledon Society that talks about 42 units in total. Is that no longer correct?
Chair, before me, the figures I have in front of me is 40 of the 70 dwellings are dual aspect. And that a further 8 dwellings which have 2 aspects onto their balconies are also added to that. So that makes 22 single aspect units.
22 out of 70. Question still. Councillor Macon.
I've written a few down. Can you go back to the slide that showed the site as it stands at the moment? No, where with the houses on. No, back or forward. I'll go through them. I'll tell you when to stop. I think it was towards the end of your presentation at the beginning. That's the one. Right, from that one, the cable going across the site, is that a telephone cable, presumably?
Yes, it would appear to be, yeah.
Electricity cable going there because there's a panel at the top. There's a panel where your hand is now, so presumably there is a cable going from there somewhere, but it doesn't go over the site.
It may do that one there.
Right. Right, I've got. Is there on the properties that face onto Mountain Way, which is a major road now, is there any plan for double glazing on the windows so that residents get peace from the constant traffic going through?
Yes. All the windows throughout the scheme would be double glazed. Right. Our air quality officer has looked at that particular aspect in terms of the proximity of the units to Moranton Way, and is satisfied with the air quality assessment undertaken. The building has been designed to be set back as reasonably as possible to achieve the development. So, but yeah, that aspect has been assessed.
There doesn't seem to be any green spaces, any green space on for children to play, apart from on the balcony.
So there's two communal outdoor spaces on the roof above the setback third floor sections. So here's one, and there's the other.
What's the boundary going to be like to stop people falling off the roof? Presumably could have a wall or fence or something.
It wouldn't be a fence or a wall, but it would be soft. There's soft planting here, some low level planting in sort of raised beds, and then there would be glazed sort of balcony glazing above. So it wouldn't be a wall, but it would be more of a glazed feature.
And can you talk me through in your modifications paper on page 11 this carbon offset number?
Yep. So that's the carbon offset payment money required under policy where there is the carbon shortfall of the development. So the council's climate change officer has been assessing the application and is happy with the energy strategy, and that is the carbon offset contribution which we secure within the Section 106 agreement. So that is required on all major developments.
6% figure mentioned, as I seem to read beforehand in the document. That's replacing that, is it?
Catch that.
Oh right, sorry. In the main document, they talked about 26% carbon supply, I suppose. I don't know what word it is. Anyway, instead of 100% carbon, it was 26%. Is this 77,000 to replace that 26%, or in addition to?
Chair, can I assist with that question? Okay.
Sorry, Chair, I can't see the 26% within the document. Is it possible to highlight the page specifically? page in the committee report where the 26% is written.
Thank you, Chair. I would like to ask about car parking, but before I do, can I just say that on page 108, it says that the single aspect flats are 41%. Well, that must be 28 units if there's 70 units in the development. That's on page 108, kind of 10 lines down from the top.
Chair, if I may, those urban design comments there were based on the they're based on the pre-application scheme. So yeah, the scheme has changed since then.
Thank you. So if I can turn to my questions about car parking. It seems to me that the double yellow... Well, sorry, let's start again. On page 104, it talks about the council's policy. Again, about halfway down, the council's policy is to discourage car ownership and promote sustainable modes of travel in high PTAL areas. So this application seems to be in line with this policy, in that there is no on-site parking except for 3 disabled bays. But is this a high PTAL area? Is that... But that's surely not high, is it? Because 6 and 5 are high.
Yes, well, our policy is specific about looking at when it's above 3/4. Then we can look at the car permit free agreement option. So really, it's when it's below 3 is when the PTAL ratings are a lot poorer.
Then the 12 parking bays that are going to be on the wall side of Station Road, is that in some way to kind of compensate for the double yellow lines on the house side of Station Road?
So with the parking arrangement, so highway transport officers have assessed a scheme, and the purpose of obviously putting in double yellow lines this side is that a majority of these houses here have drop curbs. So the double yellow lines there would work. Currently, people can park on this side of Station Road unrestricted, and a lot of the times you see from the pictures are up on the curb side. So what the scheme does propose is formally laying out some parking bays to simply re-provide some parking in the street.
Thank you, Chair. Just a couple of quick questions. The agent made a reference to the single aspect, the number of single aspect flats, and that it conformed to the London or the Mayor's planning guidelines, and that it conformed to those standards. Could the officers just confirm that?
So, Chair, in front of me I have a copy of a section of the London Housing SPG where it has a standard on dual aspect units. If you bear with me, I'll have a quick look through it. So, yes, some supporting text to it does say north-facing single aspect dwellings should be avoided wherever possible. However, in applying this standard, consideration should also be given to other planning and design objectives for the site. For example, to maximise active frontages and minimise inactive frontages. So it's part of the SPG, London Housing SPG document, but it's not specific to our local plan policy that is currently adopted. So we have to take a balanced view in the assessment of the scheme. Although yes, there are single aspect units. It is a very awkward site to work with to achieve an acceptable and good amount of homes on the site. So
you're saying it's not in breach of?
Well, it's guidance. So, for example, Standard 29 on dual aspect units says development should minimise the number of single aspect dwellings. So you are going to get schemes with single aspect units in them, but with this particular scheme, that as the design has evolved, particularly with removing post-design review panel comments, removing 2 internal stair cores, has allowed for more of a broader sense of flats within, rather than going for front to back. So there is guidance which the scheme currently, technically, you could say conflicts with, but it is guidance.
Right, and just additionally, the agent referenced that there were no external consultees that held any remaining objections to the scheme as it has been resubmitted. Could you just confirm that?
Yes, that's correct. In terms of statutory consultees, so for example, Transport for London originally objected, and now they haven't, following revisions. So yeah.
And just finally, could you just confirm that even though there has been a slight reduced number of affordable housing units in the scheme, it was the council's viability assessor that has agreed the final number that is reflected in the scheme?
Yes, they have. Yeah.
Councillor Lanning.
Thank you, Chair. On the modification sheet, it suggests that the applicant has responded to all of the concerns raised by the Council's Design Officer, which is on page 107. I just wondered whether officers could comment on a couple of the points. So at the bottom of page 107, under space standards, it says that some units clearly do not meet space standards. Does the revised scheme change that, and do they meet space standards? Secondly, the last point on housing mix, the officer has sort of queried whether or not the housing needs mix actually sort of supports our ambitions in Merton. And then the final piece is around amenity space, which is close to the top of page 108, and says that there's no defensible space for habitable rooms facing onto the pathway. This needs to be successfully addressed. Has it been? Thank you.
Chair, so in regard to the detailed comments there, they were based on the pre-application proposal. Some of the units during the pre-application proposal did have very thin bedrooms. I can't tell you for certain that there isn't a bedroom in there that is not less than 2.15 metres in width. But I know that was part of the discussions of moving forward to try and amend the plans before the formal submission.
Chair, could I just make a clarification point there?
No.
Just to confirm that all the units do meet the minimum standards. It was simply to make that point that since the DRP comments, the scheme layout and the unit the layout of the units themselves was revised to make sure that they do all meet the minimum standards.
Councillor Henry.
Thank you, Chair. On page 107, the core, can you explain a little bit in details in that section for me? Because I'm not understanding that exactly what you're saying.
So again, Chair, this is the Urban Design Officer's comments on the pre-application proposal where it had 5 stair cores across the building. So the scheme before you has 3. So 1 here, 1 here, and 1 here. The reason for removing a couple of stair cores was to help free up space within the building, and also following, that was a particular point raised by the design review panel in assessing the pre-application scheme as well. So as I mentioned before, it refers to some deep, narrow units. And so with the pre-app scheme, we're trying to achieve front-to-back units, but actually results in very thin, sort of dark units. So that is what is being referred to there in terms of the 5 cores, and now there's 3 cores proposed, which does free up the internal arrangements within the building. Given it's such an awkward site as it goes a lot thinner eastwards, we think this is a good balance.
Right. It's saying narrow and having poor level lights. Is that meaning that the lighting will be very poor for the resident who are living there? And I mean, can you just explain that for me? Because I don't know.
Yes, that's what he's referring to. So in terms of poor natural light levels.
Do we have any other questions? Yes.
Can I just say, I think it's important, Chair, if I may just clarify one final point. I don't want to interrupt, but I think it is important to clarify that those comments were on an earlier scheme, and those points have been addressed in the final scheme that you see before you, and in particular in daylight sunlight, that's been assessed by an independent assessor and found to be acceptable for the scheme. Thank you.
Councillor Latif.
Thank you, Chair. It's actually, my question's on that daylight sunlight question. On page 119, it says that, page 119, Council's daylight sunlight consultant, paragraph 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. We note that the results confirm that the majority of the proposed rooms achieve compliance with the BRE recommendations. So before that, it says the results confirm that the proposed development does not fully comply with the BRE numerical guidelines, and then the applicant obviously went back and changed it, and then it says that the majority of the proposed rooms achieve compliance with the BRE recommendations. So how many rooms don't achieve compliance? If you could, that's one question. My next question is that the design review panel said quite blatantly that they felt that the building needed more breathing space, and it was felt that it would not represent good quality family living, given the number of families that are likely to be living there. So how many single aspect dwellings were there before when the application went to the design review panel? And I now know that there are 19, but how many were there before they changed it? And secondly, how many rooms in the current scheme don't achieve the BRE recommendations for sunlight?
So, in terms of the comments by sessions, as a majority of proposed units revise saturated levels of daylight and good access to direct sunlight. I don't know specifically the answer to that query. The main thing what was being looked at here was the trees along the southern side. Now, because this this side of the development is on the southern side, where natural light levels will be higher with the sun. Our assessor had looked at that and he was satisfied with the additional information. But in terms of the actual number of units within that, I don't have a figure for you, unfortunately. The DRP scheme, so there were a number of changes in terms of breathing space when that DRP scheme, since that DRP scheme has been reviewed. So to assist, the DRP scheme they reviewed was the same one as the Urban Design Officer's comments, which were based on the pre-app. So that's the same scheme. The changes done with that, for example, take the elevation that faces north. This western block was an additional story higher. There was also an additional story within here, within these setback units here. So the scheme submitted reduced the story here and reduced it here to allow for these gaps. And then during the assessment of the current scheme, officers have sought this reduction here to assist with the height aspect. In terms of the numbers of single aspect rooms compared to proposed, I think, well, the Urban Design Officer comments do touch upon that. I've lost them now. On page 108, where it refers to 41% single aspect flats. And we have the submission before us referencing 40 of the 70 dwellings to be dual aspect. So that just helps assist you there. Yeah, thank you.
Councillor Southgate.
Yeah, just staying with the western end of the development. And looking across to the new Harris Academy going up, that's further along. My reading of this, and perhaps you can confirm it, is that this will actually be higher than the Harris Academy.
It wouldn't, no. No. So I don't have the Harris Academy figure in front of me, but it is lower than that. We specifically looked at this during the assessment discussions with the applicants, and they have submitted a document that shows that. I can try and find it in the file, but I don't have the exact figure, but it isn't as high as the highest point of the Harris Academy building.
If there are no more questions, I'd like to move to comments. Are there more questions? I'm going to take Councillor Makin.
Right, I think the carbon offset figure I was thinking about probably in another report. However, what does the council do with the £77,000 then that's there? Because I'd rather have that spent on making these into lifetime homes, which means 100% carbon saving. Well, they're not. There's no mention of carbon saving in the report anyway on this, and so they're trying to offset that amount by 77,000, which is like selling your allocation to somebody else, which is not on really. Yeah,
so the money goes towards other projects in the borough for climate change. So our climate change officer will have those projects in mind, but that's what the money goes towards. And it is standard for major residential development schemes.
Yes, I hope this is simple. The design review panel commented the building was felt to be too close to the listed wall. In any of the modifications or changes, has the building been moved relative to the listed wall?
Yes, so it's moved very slightly further back from the listed wall. I don't have the exact figure to hand, but it was slightly further towards and has been moved slightly further back to assist with that, and following discussions with Historic England throughout.
I'd like to move on to comments, please. We've had a long time on questions. Can we move to comments, please? Councillor Christie.
Thank you, Chair. I understand that there are some concerns about this application, but personally I will be looking to support it. I'm afraid of making the perfect the enemy of the good in this case. The officers have confirmed that it meets space standards. The report confirms that it meets amenity standards. There are obviously single aspect elements to the application, but as the officer confirmed, the guidance doesn't rule out any single aspect flats, and clearly in a design of this shape it would be quite difficult to achieve none. Historic England has supported the revised, or at least doesn't object to the revised application, and whilst obviously I wish there were more affordable homes on the site, as I'm sure everybody does, I would rather take some than none, which would be what would happen if the application was rejected. And so I would be supporting it, and I would urge others to as well.
No, that was your comment. Thank you. Any other comments? Councillor Southgate.
Well, I'm perfectly prepared to argue that the perfect should be. It's going to be here a long time. It needs to be as right as it can be, and it can be improved, I think, in many aspects. I'm concerned about the height in particular. I'm concerned about relative to the plot shape. This narrows as it goes east, and we end up with, from the visualisation we're offered, something like the prow of an ocean liner about to breast the rushing waters of the Wandle. And it's in danger of looking ludicrous, actually, when it gets so thin at that end of the site. We've also identified, I think, a number of problems with the number of single aspect units. The mix of units is a long way from our preferred ideal of roughly one third in the housing needs study. The density we haven't even touched on, but at 985 habitable rooms per hectare, that is the highest figure I can recall, and this is in a relatively poor PTEL rated area at 3. One could go on. I just do feel it is overdevelopment, it is too high, and really something much more modest. On the other side of the road, we have number 40 Station Road. I've been on this committee for many years, and there are many things I can look at which do not fill me with pride, but 40 Station Road is one that I feel very pleased about every time I go past it. I just feel if you've walked further west from Station Road and you've looked at the size of Harris Academy going up there on a much wider plot, that's going to be pretty massive. Trying to fit in something of comparable height on a narrowing plot is just not, to my mind, going to work. It needs to be much more modest in scale.
Any other comments? Councillor Natif.
Thank you, Chair. My comments really support what Councillor Southgate say. The design review panel were correct. They said that this is a very poor scale building and doesn't provide good quality family living. And I think that the scheme at the moment is still very large. It's in terms of mass and scale. It doesn't provide good quality family living. I have concerns on the number of single aspect apartments. I have concerns on the daylight, sunlight. And at the present, I think the applicant should go back to the design review panel and try and achieve a green status. This current scheme I couldn't support, so hopefully between Councillor Southgate and myself we may come up with a proposal.
Are there any other comments? Councillor McGough, you've been very quiet tonight. Are you okay?
I'm going to vote for it.
Councillor Making.
I'd like, in the event of it going through, can we have a condition about business hours? Because one of the comments on they've got traffic on one side of the road, having a business that may work 24 hours on the other side isn't going to be very conducive for living. So can we have a comment, can we have a condition on the business hours that they can operate?
Are there any other comments? Want to move a recommendation?
Yes, no need to be original. It's essentially recommending refusal under policy DND2 on height, bulk massing. As I look at the detail there, it fails to respond positively, I would suggest, to the siting and rhythm of the area. We also didn't touch on, but it's in the report, a recommendation about fitting in appropriately with tall buildings. This does also seem too tall for the context in which it's placed. I know there are tall buildings further along on the High Path estate, but this, relative to the properties on the north side of Station Road, I'm suggesting that it is overly dominant. It will take daylight and sunlight, given that those properties lie to the north. So.
Then we'll put that to the vote. It's a bit of a mouthful there, so are you okay? We've got written down. We need to summarise that, really. So it's basically height, mass, scale, sighting and rhythm, too tall. Loss of daylight. Are you commenting also on single aspect?
Indeed. Yes, the proportion of units that are single aspect is not really acceptable at 22 out of the 70.
So can we put that to the vote, please? Can I see those in favour of that recommendation? Those against? Not voting. Then the recommendation is carried and the original recommendation is lost.
Sorry, Chair. Before we move on, there technically is the listed building consent application as well, which needs to be determined. So the listed building consent is only required because of the listed wall, not because it's in a conservation area or any other reason. So it's about the setting and the impact on the listed wall, but I think it's important to make a decision tonight on that because of the decision already made. So it's about the impact on the setting of the listed wall from the proposal and what harm it has on the actual wall itself. Obviously, we have Historic England's comments within the report on that specifically, but that is a sort of a different consideration, you could say, to obviously what the committee have determined on the planning application.
Do we have a comment?
One of the questions that Councillor Southgate asked was that how far back had the building moved? And the officer said by a minimum amount. So can we have a more definitive answer on that before we make a decision on the listed building consent?
I can't, I'm afraid, Councillor. I think what's important with the listed wall is that you'll see Historic England's comments within the report and the Conservation Officer's comments welcoming the repairs to the wall. So
it's connected with the proposal that we've just turned down. It does say demolition of existing building and redevelopment of the site to provide. So they are linked. And we have just refused. So I'm just anxious about us saying yes to that, because it just doesn't seem right.
No, that's fine, Chair. But I think it's important though. DMD4 is specific on heritage assets, which a listed wall is. So, for example, you couldn't put in a reason for refusal on listed building consent for the loss of daylight or sunlight to neighbouring amenity. That wouldn't be appropriate. So if you are to refuse the application, the reason would have to be specific to the listed wall itself. So setting, what's the impact on the wall?
Sorry, unless I'm happy to be corrected, but I'm not sure that the reasons for the rejection of the previous application were to do with the wall or the listed status of it. Happy to be corrected, but so that suggests to me that in principle we didn't have an issue with the wall. So should we not accept that application then?
Chair, I'm not clear what we're consenting to.
Sorry, Chair.
So listed building consent is for the works to the wall itself, but also it's the setting to the wall from the new buildings. So unless you find the buildings harmful to the setting of the wall, then you know that would be an appropriate reason to come to. But with Historic England's advice and our conservation officer on the wall itself, I think there will be
Yes, Councillor.
Chair, could officers comment or point us in the direction of the wording of what we would be deciding on? Is it on page 67, number 1 or 2? Or is it elsewhere?
So it is, yeah. So it is that description. So you see at the end of the description, it's alterations to the listed wall, but also they need listed building consent for the new buildings because of the setting to the listed wall. So you've got the setting of the listed wall for the buildings as well as the alterations to the wall itself. So, DMD4 is the council's policy on heritage assets. So that would be the appropriate policy to look at for that.
Do we defer? Yeah, I was going to say, actually, I just think... Because really, we're not clear. We're not clear on what it is we're voting for. I'm sorry.
Well, Chair, I mean, the applicants have outlined they would like a decision this evening on the application, on both applications. So it's up to you, but that's just to let you know that's what they seek. So in terms of would you be deferring to bring it back to committee or deferring to liaise with yourself and the Vice Chair on?
I think that might be better. Let's do that. Defer to, for further clarification. Sorry, I just feel quite mystified by what it means.
Sorry, Chair, can I ask, we would like a decision on that, please, if that's possible.
You will get a decision on that, but I'm afraid we won't be giving a decision on that tonight. We're going to take further consultation, and the Chair and the Vice Chair will then, on that advice.
Sorry, on the basis that the main application has been refused against officer's recommendation, clearly I will need to advise my client on a way forward, and if we don't have a decision on the associated listed building consent, then that is not possible for us to do. So we would like to request a decision is made on that one if possible.
Chair, can I just advise members that you're not, I suppose the expression might be, painting yourself into a corner by granting listed building consent. By granting listed building consent to carry out works within the curtilage of the listed wall, that doesn't bind your hands in the future to say, aha, you've approved that, you've therefore got to consent to the planning application. Just looking quickly through the report, it looks as if there appear to be various minor works proposed to the wall. There's various railings and gates which are being proposed. So in that sense, as long as the planning decision is quite precise in terms of exactly which drawings are being sanctioned as part of any listed building consent, so there's no ambiguity that by some sort of sleight of hand the council has unwittingly allowed the footprint of the building to be endorsed, then I think we can proceed. So I would suggest in this instance, so long as the planning officer can confirm to the Chair and Vice Chair the status of the drawings which are to be signed off, and in a little more detail just to confirm what I've interpreted as being the scope of the works, I think you could sign off the listed building consent application this evening.
I'm sorry that's been quite confusing, but it's just the wording, really, that has made it very confusing. Agenda item 8, which is the Russell Road agenda, and we will be waiting for members of the public to come into the gallery and speakers. Just while we're waiting for everybody to settle, can just say, because new members of the public arrive, how we work here is that there's a traffic light system here, so the speaker who's opposing will get 3 minutes, and then the agent, there are 2 speakers actually objecting, so between you will get 6 minutes, and the agent will have 6 minutes to respond. And the officer will present the report, then you will get your opportunity to speak. Any issues raised, the officer will take up, and then once that's happened, it moves to members then to ask questions and to make comments, and then we will vote on the application. Are we all ready?
Thank you, Chair. Members, the application site's on the west side of Russell Road within Wimbledon Central. The property currently comprises 2-storey pair of semi-detached dwellings. To the east of the site is the back end of the theatre, which fronts onto the Broadway to the north. To the south of the site is a single-storey building comprising 5 separate bungalow units. Their front doors are on the north side, and small amount of rear amenity space on the south side. To the west are 2-storey traditional houses. To the north is an access ramp up to a open-air car park, serving the building to the north. The proposal itself is to demolition of the existing buildings on site and erection of a Part 2, 3 and 4-storey detached building to provide 9 residential flats. The housing mix would be 6 1-bed units and 3 2-bed units. Each flat would have some outdoor amenity space as outlined in section 4 of the report. This is the proposed site layout. Existing is on the right hand side here. So the scheme would allow for side access here, which would access cycle storage and bin storage. The roof plan here also shows solar panels being proposed on the roof. Turning to the floor plans, so ground floor level, flat 1 here at the front. Flat 2, studio unit with an outdoor space here. The front flat have a small bit of outdoor space here. Flat 3 at the back benefits from a large outdoor space at the back of the site. First floor, 1-bed unit at the front, another one here, and this one at the back here. And then second floor, 2 flats, and top floor there'll be 1 flat with 2 outdoor spaces for this unit. Proposed elevations, so from the front on Russell Road, so you'll just see outlined and dotted the existing building height. Proposal would obviously knock them down. Typical sort of small scale flatter development proposed with the top floor set back within different roof material. To the south side of the proposal, the rear section at the back, slightly different brick shade, but also at first floor only coming out. Looking at the rear, again, so the building has been specifically staggered in as it goes back, so it cuts in here and then further back here. The roof flat, I call it, is also set back. What that does is provide various little outdoor amenity spaces for each flat. Some 3D visuals to assist in the application. So if you're on Russell Road at the front, and again from the other side, just 3D from the front as well, just showing how the building could look. And again there. Some windows here have been specifically designed to look this way rather than straight to the side. As outlined before, the bungalows quite uniquely are actually handed front to back this way. So their primary outlook is to the north and the south. And again from the back, showing the proposed building. Some site pictures. So this is the site itself here, with another building beyond. Looking down this is the existing access to the bungalows to the south of the site, just showing their access points within, and again on the same footpath looking east. Looking at the back of the bungalows here, as I said, they have a very small amount of outdoor space at the back for each one. On the site itself, you'll see somewhat neglected outdoor space at the back. Building at the back, a few little single-storey additions. There's the car park ramp next to it. Looking from within the building itself out towards the back, towards the rear elevation of houses to the west of the site, So that helps provide useful context there. The case officer has got on top of the car park ramp here, you see, so the site is to the left here, down below, and there the rear of the properties on the road to the west, and again on the car park again. So, Chair, overall, officers consider to be a good use of the site within the town centre of Wimbledon, and officers recommend permission be granted. Thank you.
Thank you. Sarah Sharp, please.
There is such a strong national and local drive to create high-quality, inclusive, sustainable, attractive, and as green as possible buildings that will last. But there's a lot wrong with this application. It doesn't fall within that category, and a bit of tweaking won't solve it, and I urge you to reject it tonight. It contravenes the NPPF, DMD2, CS14, the London Plan, all of which call for high-quality, sustainable, inclusive homes. It is dominant. It's too tall and oppressive, not only for the characterful street, but especially for the residents living behind and visitors to the listed theatre. Russell Road is predominantly two-storey buildings with a couple of exceptions, but this will be a very dominant application. The fourth story of this building at the front is only set back by 35 centimetres, making the building top-heavy. And whilst the building itself is set back by 2.1 metres, it's still far too forward than the existing house lines. It juts out, it disrupts the rhythm and creates a harmful anomaly on the road in both size, design and street line. These extra 6 units won't boost the affordable housing stock because they're less than 11 units to qualify. They'll be sold as luxury flats by nature of their prime Wimbledon location. So let's get it right. Create less than 9 flats, provide decent living conditions and a completely different green design that scales the climate emergency that we're living through. The site is less than a few seconds off from the conservation area. It's opposite a very visible and nationally known Grade 2 listed theatre. Historic England didn't look at this application because it doesn't fall under its remit, just in case you thought that perhaps, like myself, you were under the impression it was and that it didn't mind this application. The housing mix is 1 to 2 bed units. This contravened Merton's strategic housing need of July 2019 report. It projects that the need is 38% and 34% of 3 and 4 bedroom flats and houses in Wimbledon, whereas it's only 7% for 1 bedroom houses. We are losing 2 houses and we're not getting except 1 bedroom. We're not getting any 3 bedroom flats. The design is very, very average. It's akin to a container ship in multicolours, and it harms rather than improves the environment. The materials, painted copper cladding, red brick at the front, lime mortar, blue-black brick with black mortar, is just a mishmash. It harms. It's not a sustainable building. It has the minimum amount of energy requirement, the minimum amount of standard living size. And I urge you to reject this application. It is a small development in a very prominent location. It is easy to get it right. We can marry the contemporary with the traditional for the future, especially since there is a site next door which will be developed soon. Thank you.
Thank you.
As owner of 16 Gladstone Road, 15 to... Green one? Right, there we go. As owner of 16 Gladstone Road, 15 to 17 Russell Road back straight onto the back of my property and numbers 14. And any plans for anything other than what is already there, a 2-storey family home, will naturally make an impact. I'm speaking on behalf of the owners of 14, 16 and 18 Gladstone Road, and we want to make it clear we're not against any development. We're in total agreement that it has to be in keeping with its immediate surroundings, thus respecting the architecture, height and footprint. But it does not impact on the aesthetics that currently exist. Russell Road is a predominantly residential street, and 15 and 17 are flanked by number 19, a 1-storey building of 5 flats, and 13 Russell Road, a commercial property consisting of a large 3-storey building. We read with interest the design and access statement from Niche Architects, which includes a constraint that the scale and massing of neighbouring properties should be considered, and that overlooking will need to be carefully considered. We do not believe these proposals do that. The proposed development is far too high compared to other residential buildings and commercial buildings in the street. The height of the proposed building should not be considered acceptable when it is compared to the height of the theatre that is opposite and a commercial, not a residential building. It should be compared to the properties that immediately flank it. The document also states that the proposal is for a predominantly three-storey block to the street, where the third storey is proposed providing a single penthouse. To me and my neighbours, this is therefore a four-storey building that is replacing a two-storey building. This thinking is supported by the Create Architect and Design letter of the 22nd of October that acknowledges the proposal is for Part 2, Part 3 and Part 4-storey building. We believe the plot footprint is 390 square metres, and it is quite clear that the current footprint of 15 and 17 Russell Road represents less than 50% of that land. The proposal put forward for the building that covers almost 90% of the plot and 526 square metres, so almost double footprint and height. In fact, the proposed ground floor extends so close to the boundary with the gardens of 14 and 16 that will be very overbearing. We've already expressed our concerns on sightlines, and setting back the first floor and frosting the glass on the now larger balcony on the first floor does not satisfy our concerns. In fact, we are not sure if it's completely ignored the sightlines from flat 8 and 9 also at the back of the building on the third and fourth floors, which would still have clear sightlines of our gardens. We were pleased to see that the 1.4 metre obscure glazing was now being proposed. However, we understand the average height of a male in the UK is 1.74 metres, and for a female it's 1.61 metres, so obscure glazing is clearly not high enough to allay our concerns.
I have to stop you there because it was your 3 minutes is up, sorry. Is it Jeremy Emerson?
Yes,
yeah.
That's correct. Good evening. Firstly, if I may apologise that our planning consultant couldn't speak tonight. His wife works for the NHS, so I'm doing my best at short notice. Secondly, briefly, I'd just like to say thank you to the officers and members for attending tonight. We're a small local development company, and we really appreciate the meeting going ahead because time is of essence to us, and it does make a difference. I'm a director and owner of Hillview Ventures, and this is our third project in Wimbledon and Rains Park. We purchased this site as we regarded it as ideal for flats, being so central to Wimbledon town centre and its facilities. The site directly next door, Collingham House, is identified in the officer's report by Wimbledon Council as suitable for a 6-storey building in their master plan. So we do not think that our 4-storey proposal was unreasonable in this context. Nevertheless, we have been careful to design the building with setbacks and positioning of windows to avoid significant overlooking of our neighbours to the west and the south. As a chartered architect, I did take reference from the copper roof and the red brick of the Wimbledon Theatre to create what we hope will be an exciting contemporary building, but also one that has regard to its historical neighbours. This is a green design. It has photovoltaic panels on the roof, and it is highly energy efficient. We have produced a report in detail in the application. We designed the building from the outset using the BRE light model to minimise loss of light to neighbours. The officer's report clearly addresses the impact on the flats within 19 Russell Road and those further away in Gladstone Road in its recommendation to grant consent. We do, of course, accept and appreciate that most development is likely to have some impact on the amenity enjoyed by occupants of neighbouring properties, and we have tried to minimise this as much as possible. During the application process and in dialogue with the planning officer, we omitted the balcony at the rear, and a bedroom was removed from the first floor to increase the distance to the habitable rooms of Gladstone Road by over 20 metres. The resultant roof terrace has opaque privacy screen to avoid any overlooking from both the windows and the terrace across this distance.
We noted in the second consultation that there were still concerns from neighbours on Gladstone Road regarding this screen and new residents looking over it. This is covered in the officer's report by condition number 10, but we would be happy to have this also specified at a suitable height in that condition, say 1.8 metres minimum, if officers thought that appropriate, and members, to avoid any overlooking and provide certainty to our neighbours. If members are minded to support the officer's recommendation to give this application consent, we hope that in the fullness of time this building will provide a valuable contribution to the street scene on Russell Road, and that it will be a good neighbour while providing much needed additional homes in Wimbledon town centre. Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you, Chair. On page 52, the Wimbledon Theatre say that any impact on Russell Road will cause them operational difficulties. So my question is this likely? And if it is it actually a material planning consideration?
Chair, so the operation of the theatre, when I actually visited the site, there were actually lorries with hazards on parked on the road serving the theatre. So I can only assume they're referring to that. That wouldn't essentially be material to stop the development on the site coming forward opposite. We will, I believe in the conditions put on looking for the construction management plan to control how the building would be constructed. But no, that wouldn't be a consideration as such in this case.
Other questions? Councillor McGrath.
Thank you. Just a couple of quick questions. Was there any comments from the Wimbledon Society on this application? I couldn't see one, but normally they do comment on these things. Secondly, can I just double check how much higher is this building than the building on I know that is it Collingham House on one side that's taller, but the building's on the other side. And can I just check about the external space? Because there was a comment about taking up a large part of the garden, and I just wanted to check. I think it says on page 59 that it all meets the standards for external space, but can I just double check that, please?
In terms of Wimbledon Society comments, normally officers do set them out separately within the consultation response. So I believe we don't have any comments from them on the scheme. But unfortunately I can't guarantee that. In terms of the external amenity space, so what's proposed, the ground floor flat at the rear simply benefits from the natural end to the building line of the outdoor space here. So they benefit from a very large outdoor amenity space. Whereas some units have smaller, for example, this flat here, going upstairs, first floor, balcony here for this flat at the front for this flat. The top floor flat benefits naturally from 2 outdoor spaces. We have obviously put on the conditions for the screening. With reference to the closest first floor balcony to the neighbouring gardens to the west, as outlined in some of the comments, the scheme has been amended during the application process. This flat was originally 2-bed. It's been brought back to move the terrace further back. The terrace has got bigger, but it has been moved further away from the rear boundary, and a 1.8 metre screen is proposed on this particular balcony here to help prevent overlooking to the west. In terms of the height difference, I would have to get the plans out to measure if you wish me to, but you can see, for example, here, that neighbouring building, that's the chimney of the neighbouring building there, which is actually in the photographs, I believe. Yeah, so similar, little bit higher than that chimney, top of the chimney there for the proposal.
Any other questions?
It's concerning numbers 19A to E Russell Road, which at one point are described as an anomaly, but Para's 7.1819 onwards concedes there would be material harm to these 5 properties. And yet this is recommended for approval. I mean, how do we square that?
Chair, so yes, the neighbouring building to the south, somewhat unusual in the sense that the units are split into 5 units, and they only have outlooks to the front this side and the back this side. So in other words, they're sort of side-facing. It's a side-facing building. So the applicants have done a daylight and sunlight study. What they have taken into account is the existing situation on site. There is some large hedging down the side of the bungalow entrances at the moment, which does have some impact on the windows. The windows at the front are the bedroom, and at the back they are the living room kitchen space. So the applicant's taken the baseline scenario, and the proposal wouldn't be materially worse than that situation, but it's acknowledged that this is landscaping, and that could change at some time in the future in terms of being removed. So we have to weigh up a balance here with the assessment of the scheme. It's in the town centre where you expect some development to come forward. We have had a recent appeal decision on this very issue round the corner on the Broadway for a large office building, which was to be sited on the boundary, and that was a 6-storey building with a neighbouring residential garden, and that was allowed on appeal. So we are having to take balanced views here when it comes to daylight sunlight issues. In terms of the design of the scheme, they have designed stepping it away. So you'll see here at first floor level that's stepped away, and then this elevation up. This one here steps in, and then this one at the back is only first floor level only, and that is further stepped in. So they have sought to mitigate that impact, but that is the balance of considerations for us in the assessment of the scheme. The benefit of new residential units within the town centre against an impact on an existing unit, albeit based on the existing site circumstances with the land existing hedging overhanging. So that's how we come to the balanced view with it.
Councillor Chief, did you want to speak? No. Sorry, I thought I saw your hand up. Okay, can we go to comments then, please? No comments? Yeah?
Thank you, Chair. My comment is, I'm just wondering why 3 colours instead of 1. To be honest with you, I like the building, but of course the 3 colours kind of show me off. So, yes.
Okay. Any other comments? Councillor Southgate.
Thank you, Chair. I think it's entirely hinges around whether we're sort of looking towards Broadway, pivoting in that direction towards the larger, more commercial buildings there, like Collingham House, or looking away down Russell Road and then arguing that this is inappropriate relative to the largely 2-storey houses we have down Russell Road. I'm genuinely undecided actually there, but I think over time we will see, and I can see it at other roads leading off the Broadway where there's been developments of about this scale, abutting the older residential properties. And the 19A2E Russell Road, I assume these are largely retirement, are they, apartments? So I just
No,
Whether
as far as
that's
I'm aware,
relevant or not, I don't know. But
no, as far as I'm aware, they're not retirement apartments. They no. So they're just market homes, as far as I'm aware.
I mean, it's okay to say that the flats with just one story are anomalies, but they are there and they are completely overshadowed by this building, which is what concerns me. I mean, I'm also concerned when I hear, it's not maybe strictly relevant, but that the master plan allows a 6-story building there, and therefore that's an argument for allowing this building, which is sort of rather reflects some of the concerns that we have about the master plan. But I do have concerns about this and the height, I have to say.
Okay. Any other comments? Then can we move to the vote, please? Those in favour of this application, please show. Those against? Not voting. And the application is approved. Move to agenda item 5 next, I think. Just make that sure, yeah. This item, I think, has come to us because it is a member of staff's application, so that's the reason why it is here.
Thank you, Chair. The application is for a garden building to serve an existing flat. So the flats, there's a number of flats, but they have split up gardens as shown on the plan here. So existing on the left, proposed on the right, and it's for a proposed replacement garden shed. That's the design they're looking for, and that's the dimensions here on the south of the plan. In terms of pictures, they have side access down to the back of their garden. There's the flats ahead of you there, and that's the location for the storage building here. Thank you, Chair.
Any questions? Yeah.
The objector seems to be concerned about people sleeping in this garden shed, and I see there's a condition which says use incidental to the main building. Is that the same as actually prohibiting sleeping in the garden shed?
Incidental, Chair, is for things like storage, a gym, that sort of thing. There will be all sorts of case law out there in terms of fact and degree as to how far you go with it, but if someone was to sleep in there longer term, then that would conflict with that condition. So essentially, that's the appropriate condition to put on to cover that off, and that's all we can do with that.
So Airbnb would definitely be a conflict with that.
Any comment? Yeah.
Thank you, Chair. I think if this application wasn't brought forward because it was a council employee, would this just be permitted development?
It wouldn't, because it serves a flat, so it's kind of strange, but flats don't have permitted development rights, not even in their gardens, so that's why they've applied. And it might be the height may exceed the technical requirements in the list anyway. But yeah.
Any other comments? Shall we move to the vote then? Those in favour of the application, please show. Unanimous. Thank you very much. We now move on to agenda item 7, which is the old fire station.
Chair, members, this application is brought to committee at the request of Councillor Welton. Can I first draw members' attention to the supplementary agenda? The application concerns, the planning officer has updated the planning history on the site, as we've now got an application for the conversion of the fire station to provide 9 flats involving the erection of a rear and side extension, and that wasn't with us when the report was drafted. The proposal concerns hoardings that have been erected around the forecourt of the former Mitcham Fire Station, which is a locally listed building in the Mitcham Cricket Green Conservation Area. You can see the hoardings here. Permission is needed to retain them. The hoardings are partly on the applicant's land and partly on council land. You'll see from the report that the council's property management team have not raised an objection to the hoardings. However, the application has been the subject of an objection from a local amenity group, which is summarised in the report. I would suggest it's perhaps unfortunate that the hoardings were erected without permission and that a suitable scheme to develop the site is not underway, which would have rendered the hoardings permitted development. The hoardings are prominent, but perform a valuable function in making the site secure, pending redevelopment. Since submission of this application, the Council has received an application to remodel and reuse the property, which I just referred to in the modification sheet. And in the event that a suitable scheme emerged and work commenced on the site, the hoardings could remain as they might around other construction sites. However, for the time being, and in order to enable future review, permission is recommended to be time limited by way of a condition.
Have Mary Butler.
Hi, I'm a trustee of Mitcham Cricket Green Community and Heritage, the civic society for that part of Mitcham. I'd like to start by thanking Councillor Welton for calling in this application so the planning committee can make the decision. As a committee, you've been unwavering in your support of higher standards for development on Lower Green West, which respect the conservation area. The issues raised by these hoardings around the former fire station are simple and clear-cut. They enclose an excessive area and will cause serious harm to conservation area views and locally listed buildings. To protect the fire station, the hoarding need only be erected around the perimeter of the building. It does not need to enclose an additional area of land as large again as the fire station, and that isn't even owned by the applicant. The apron in front of the fire station has been open for years without issue. Because the hoardings have already been erected without permission, we can see that they have a highly damaging visual impact on this key location in the heart of Mitcham Cricket Green Conservation Area. The character of Lower Green West is defined by the variety of views through and across it. These are now significantly obstructed. The hoarding also damages the uncluttered setting of the nationally listed war memorial land and causes harm to the locally listed fire station and vestry hall by limiting views and eroding their context. We are also concerned that if temporary permission is granted, then the hoardings will not be removed. The applicant's track record has been to willfully ignore planning controls by erecting the existing hoardings without seeking planning permission and on land not even in their ownership. We ask you to refuse this development because it fails to preserve or enhance Mitcham Cricket Green Conservation Area, it harms designated heritage assets, and it is in conflict with development plan policies CS14, DMD1, DMD2 and DMD4. The applicant should remove their illegally erected hoardings and come back with a less intrusive plan. Thank you.
So why is it so occupying so much more space than it apparently needs?
Chair, for this particular application, and I'm not trying to sort of bat the question back, but the question that needs to be asked is, are the hoardings in this location acceptable? If the hoardings were to be 1 metre closer or further away from the buildings, they'd still be hoardings, and it's that we should be making the decision on. You'll see in the officer's report that it's been highlighted that the Mitcham area has been the subject of fly tipping, travellers, and damage to buildings in the conservation area. You may recall that for a number of years the cricketers was unscreened, apart from metal shutters in the windows of the building. The building didn't have robust hoardings around it, and I would suggest that its condition did a lot to detract from the character and quality of the conservation area. As I've said, had these proposals come forward as a means of enclosure to a building, we might have taken a different approach. But it's quite clear that the purpose of these is to make the site secure. It's a locally listed building. It's got a number of fine details. I think if it was free from enclosure, the fabric of the building could be damaged, and if the hoardings didn't enclose the forecourt, then again it's not so much whether or not the applicant needs that space, but I would suggest that it could be prone to other uses and activities that would also mar the quality of the Mitcham Cricket Green Conservation Area.
Councillor.
Thank you, Chair. 2 questions, if I may. Could I just reconfirm that if the planning application that was mentioned at the beginning, that's also in the modification sheet, if that were to be granted and development was to start, then this would be permitted development? And then second question is that in the objections there's mention of concrete bollards, and it says that that's not included in the description and should be removed. I was just wondering whether or not that is an issue. Thank you.
Chair, although unfortunately the photographs that we've got don't show it, if you go inside the enclosure, there are concrete blocks that have been erected on the inside face of some of the black painted timber panels. Again, if someone or some group of persons was particularly determined to get access onto the site, then the timber, even though it looks fairly robust, could no doubt be removed. I think it would be a lot harder to remove or to occupy the site given the spacing of the concrete blocks behind the hoardings. But again, they would form part of the means of enclosure. And as we've put on the recommendation to members, if development doesn't move ahead and the committee wishes to review matters, then we have set a time limit on this. I think it's the 1st of April in 2 years' time. So again, it may seem a long time, but if an application was submitted for a scheme now, it may be coming before committee in perhaps August or September. The applicant would then want to start discharging pre-commencement conditions on an application. They may then be in a position to go out and get a contract to develop the site. It could be spring or summer 2021 before that development commences. The way in which the condition is structured would give the applicant time to work through a scheme, sort out conditions, and then commence development without having to remove the hoardings, but would remove them at the end of the construction period.
Councillor McGrath. Councillor Crowe.
Chair, I think Mr. Lewis just said 24 months, but on page 40, 3.1, it says 12 months.
Yes, permission is sought for 12 months. And with something like this, I fully respect that if members are minded to support the application, there may be some debate or discussion as to the appropriate length of time for allowing the hoardings to remain.
Thank you, Chair. The objector mentioned, unless I'm sort of mistaken, that this hoarding, the location of it is on land not owned by the applicant. Is that the case?
Yes, the site isn't solely in the applicant's ownership, but for something like this, we have sought comments from the council's property management team, and they have come back and raised no objection to this.
Any other questions, Councillor Lanning?
Just one question, again, related to the objector's comments, that there's a mention that the best action would be to retain the building guardians. Is that to suggest that prior to the hoarding going up, there were guardians of this building, and that's changed?
Sorry, Chair, I'm not aware as to whether or not there were... Yes, sorry, that was when it was under the ownership of the London Fire Brigade. So it's a nice idea, but it's not something that, as planners, we could enforce.
Any other questions? Comments?
Thank you, Chair. Yes, let's leave aside the issue of whether it, if it was my garden and you put your hoarding across it, I'd want to charge you rent for that. But I think I would accept that it's expensive to have property guardians on site to secure the premises, so hoardings are a reasonable way of dealing with that. What I do think is that the hoardings could be made more acceptable. Walking along High Path this week, looking at the new Clarion development on the north side, and that includes some quite interesting history panels about the site and the area. And I think this could be made a lot more acceptable if we could consider having some informative panels about the history of the Green and the fire station. Yeah. And the other point, sorry, we talk about permission for 12 months, and yet further on we talk about...
we have...
Yes, so which are we going to go for? I think so.
I'd like to make a comment on it. I think it's really ugly. I do. I think that building's quite beautiful. And that's going to be there for a long time. Part of the problem, I think, is that with developments, and there's a development in my area that's had 2 planning applications now, and it's still not gone ahead. Developments are actually being delayed in some areas. And if this was delayed, this could be up here for more than 2 years. It isn't attractive at all. And it's a shame they didn't go for something see-through, because then you'd have continued to see the building. I mean, when you look at the gates at the front part of it, you can still go through and see the rest of the building. I do think it's really ugly. A real eyesore. But what do we do with it? I mean, are they going to take that? Are we asking them to put up something more acceptable? Did you want to say something?
Is it possible to take on Councillor Southgate's comments about the visibility of it. I make the site, make the hoarding look more approachable and more in keeping with the area, because it's next to the war memorial as well.
I don't disagree, but is that going to be a condition they have to do that?
Could we make that condition?
At the moment, the hoardings are unauthorised. So we're being asked to grant permission to retain some works that have already been carried out. I'm always a little bit hesitant to then sanction the retention of something, but you can only retain it if you do something else to the hoarding. Because really what you're saying is the hoarding as it stands should be removed in any event. I think if there was a very clear and limited timescale on something like this, perhaps 3 months to come up with an acceptable scheme for decorating or applying information boards and images relevant to and reflecting the history and character of the Cricket Green conservation area, such details to be submitted to the council for approval and installed within 3 months from the date of the decision. You've then got a bit of a dilemma that if they don't come back with those hoardings, then there's a breach of condition, or they could appeal the condition. I don't know, and I would suggest perhaps, given that we're not holding up the applicant from putting the hoardings up because they've just gone ahead and done it, that if that's the will of the committee, that there should be suitable decoration and historic information boards, then we don't take enforcement action for a period of 3 months, and that at the earliest opportunity a report is brought back before members with amended details showing those panels. It rather sort of leaves the applicant, I suppose, in a something of a state of limbo, because it could imply that if we weren't happy with it, then we would then enforce against the unauthorised hoardings. But at least it's showing willing to say, look, you've put the hoardings up, please would you make them look better?
I personally have an issue with the scale of the hoardings. I think they come out really far, and they obviously come onto land that isn't owned by the applicant. And I suppose my question is, had they sought advice on what the hoarding should look like? I assume it wouldn't look like that. It wouldn't go onto council land, and it would be closer to the actual building itself. So I don't think in its current state, even if you were to add historical information onto the boards, it would be acceptable.
We're making it complicated, aren't we? The idea of the panels, I think, would be to sort of mitigate the harm done to all that the Cricket Green Heritage Group say here is correct. There is detrimental visual impact by virtue of this, and it would go some way to offset that, and making that something that we look to be done within 3 months, thus inferring that we would seek enforcement against the unlawful hoardings otherwise, I think would not be a bad thing.
Sorry, Chair. Trying to set up new applications and carry out consultation is going to be a little more challenging than might otherwise been at the moment. So perhaps if that was the view of members, and it was minuted that members were concerned that if this wasn't forthcoming within that period, then officers would be sanctioned to take enforcement action. Then, like I said, I think it would be firm, but it would show that there was a degree of compromise being offered here.
Thank you. Okay, that's what we're going to do. I think it's unanimous. Okay, so we're now moving on to agenda item 6, which is land rear of 27 Leafield Road.
Chair, this application is brought before committee due to the scope and number of objections that have been raised. Again, members' attention is drawn to the supplementary agenda, which refers to, I think, a further representation which may have been circulated to members. The proposals entail the redevelopment of a garden plot in Merton Park. As you'll see from the image before you, the plot is considerably larger than its neighbours, and the site has been the subject of proposals in the past to develop a 4-bedroomed dwelling. The planning officer's report provides a detailed description of the proposed dwellings on the site, with one dwelling going roughly where the cursor is moving on the screen, the other dwelling occupying the area where the hand is moving here. I visited the site and I can confirm that the site has been partitioned so that at the moment there is a fence running along where the cursor is moving here, and this site, or this part of the site, is very much sort of grass and is roped off with the two plots being defined on the site. You'll see from the officer's report that there have been various responses to the consultation exercise, not least of which are concerns about the principle of development. You'll also see that there were concerns about the earlier proposal, and your attention is drawn to the fact that a scheme for one dwelling was refused in 2007. What I would add in that respect is that the proposals that you have before you this evening are for two very low-rise dwellings, here and here. And you'll see on the officer's report that the buildings would have an eaves height of 2.7 metres and a maximum height, because parts of them have got pitched roofs, of 4.5 metres. Sorry, can I just have the report? The earlier refusal from 2007 took buildings on this part of the site. It was a very contemporary and geometric new bungalow with almost like a pair of wings forming the shape of its roof. But the roof went up to 7.5 metres. So although the earlier scheme did have just one dwelling, which pretty much occupied most of this part of the site, with a garage block over here, it was significantly higher than the proposal before you this evening. The officer's assessment goes through various issues, commencing with the principle of development. The site is a garden plot. Garden plot development can prove to be contentious, but is delivering housing. So it's a use which is compatible with the neighbouring land uses, which are also housing. You'll see as well the officer goes through issues of visual amenity, design, impact on neighbours, but again concludes that despite being quite a contemporary and compact approach to development, it does provide a satisfactory solution. In terms of technical aspects of the scheme, there are positive elements such as a green roof. It has good standards in terms of sustainability credentials. There is adequate parking. The bin stores on the site are acceptable, and certainly the architects or designers have got into a lot of detail here to make sure that the various technical issues are addressed. And the scheme is recommended for approval, subject to a number of conditions.
We don't have any speakers here, but we do have a note from Mr. Powell, who says, I am against this application because myself and all residents object to the houses being built. Looking into the future, if they had the houses built and then moved house, we would be left with all the inconvenience of something we objected to. This is the second time the residents have objected to any houses being built, and I think you should not allow these plans to go ahead. So, questions?
Yes, it's in my ward, and I've heard a lot about this over the past few months. And one particular point of concern is about access to the rear of the properties in Leafield Road, and really the detail of how that will be guaranteed. Will the line of the access track be changed in any way? Will it allow reasonable turning angles? That those seem to be, but essentially it's what guarantees do they have that their rights away to the rear of their properties will be inviolate? And apart from telling me it's not a planning matter.
Chair, I've visited the site, and at the moment access to the site isn't open to anyone who walks by this part of Leafield Road. There are gates across the entrance to this, and the access road, again, in common with lots of other access routes for interwar houses, has various rights conferred on neighbouring occupiers. The proposals, I would suggest, do have the potential for some benefits to the existing residents, insofar as the planning conditions would require the little access road. Sorry, I'm just skipping through the images here. Would have the potential for the little access road to be upgraded. You'll see on the drawings, the annotation to the drawings, it shows permeable sealed gravel surface. So quite a pleasant finish, giving it a slightly sort of rustic feel to it, but perfectly robust. And like I said, something which other occupiers could benefit from. But yes, you're right. I wouldn't want to get drawn into issues about I have certain rights of access over that land. That would have to be resolved between the applicant and the neighbours.
Councillor Makin.
I can't see what the index says at the side. So could you explain what the small dots that look like tiddlywinks are and the bigger circles around them?
Sorry, Chair. There's a recommended maximum bin carrying distance for householders to a collection point. So that's why they've marked on the 30-metre radius here. What they've also shown is a maximum distance from the kitchen to the individual properties bin stores, and they've also shown on this circle or the dotted line here the council's maximum collection point distance. So what it's saying is that from the back edge of the pavement to the place where refuse can be stored on the day of collection, that meets the council's requirement. In terms of the maximum recommended bin carrying distance for a householder, that too is acceptable because it's within 30 metres of where those bins would be stored.
Thank you for that, but they weren't the ones I was talking about. I was talking about the smaller ones, probably trees, and the filled-in one next to it. If you move the hand up to the top of the circle, yeah, there, that's it. That circle and the 4 little ones up.
I think that's meant to show a tree, which may or may not be being planted as part of the proposal. I can just check on the photographs of the site. So the area where the little marks are, is roughly where the hand is moving near that fence. So it would look like that this is the potential to plant some trees on the site. And I think we've got a landscaping scheme. Sorry, there are conditions about landscaping schemes on the recommendation pages.
Any other questions? Councillor South.
Yes, you said, Mr. Lewis, that the larger of the two bungalows has maximum height of 4.5 metres, 2.7 metres to the eaves. The smaller unit, can you give me the dimensions of, or the height really of that? I haven't found it, I'm afraid.
Chair, from the images which I've combed through on this, and if you look at this, we've got section AA running across the site. So if you can see at the top of the screen where we've got A, so where the hand is here, that's the back of the sports field. Where the hand is moving, that's roughly where the little service track is around the back of the site. So section AA, we can see here, here's the larger of the two bungalows, the L-shaped unit, and then over here we've got the pitched roof of the smaller unit, and you'll see in the bigger image below we've got the flat roofed part with the green roof rising to the pitched roof. Then we've got the little service road in between, and then we've got the pitched roof part, or the section cuts through the pitched roof part of the smaller unit. So that's why I'm saying I think it was perhaps an omission on the officer's report, but I believe that the eaves and the maximum height to the ridge for both dwellings are the same.
Any other questions? Comments? Move to the vote? No?
Got to say something, haven't I? I think it's actually quite clever to split the site in this way to accommodate two dwellings, compared with the previous scheme for a rather ambitious house rising to 7.5 metres. And I'm thinking, is this much more than you might expect from a large garage. It probably is a bit higher, isn't it? But on balance, I would, and there are details too about the access track and the bin storage and so on, but I think they've been dealt with. And really, going through all of the objections, they seem to be very much centred on securing right of access, which I think can be dealt with. So yes, it's an acceptable and even quite a good scheme, actually.
Okay, going to move to the vote. Can I see those in favour, please show. Thank you. That's unanimous. Approved. And now we go to appeals. This is to note. And on to enforcement. Again, to note, but if you do have any issues, particularly about enforcement, please speak to officers directly. We've got a further report which came today around coronavirus issue. It's agenda item 13. Do you all have a copy? Yeah, okay. So this is an urgency report because the committee is likely not to be meeting, and how we will be dealing with things during that hopefully short period. So we have 3 recommendations. If you've got the report in front of you, I won't read them out. Are we in favour of the recommendations? Please show. Yeah, do you want to comment? Sorry.
I'm not sure the recommendations are really adequate. I'm quite happy for you and Mr. Lee to be the first named people to make decisions on behalf of the committee, but the recommendations haven't really addressed the issue of you being indisposed or Mr. Lee being indisposed. Okay, that's Mr. Milligan steps in, but I think we need a kind of deputy for yourself, and we also need to consider what happens if the officer and the councillor disagree. I assume the councillor's opinion carries sway.
I think at the end of the day, we're charged as officers to make decisions on planning matters, but in accordance with the wishes of members expressed in forums such as this, a committee. If the delegation arrangements are to be changed, then that's something that that really does need looking at very carefully, because I'm more than conscious in terms of decision making that as planners we have judicial review challenges, we have complaints of the Ombudsman, so we need to be absolutely squeaky clean on this, but I've only just had sight of the report myself, so I'll no doubt want to have a chat with Neil about it.
Well, I was only going to suggest really that just as Mr. Lee can delegate to Mr. Milligan, maybe you should be delegating, if you're unavailable, to the vice chair of the committee as your deputy, and that we note that in the case of dispute, the councillor's opinion holds sway.
I would be happy if it just remained as it was, because quite frankly, if I wasn't around, then I think they would go to the deputy, but let's hope I am around.
I appreciated the point about it going through legal review.
It did
so
go to legal.
Let's just get on with it then.
That's unanimous, thank you. Please stay safe.